Okay, it's game number 9 of the Women's World Chess Championship match. And we have Tan Zhongyi with the white pieces, her last white pieces in the match. And she's playing against Ju Wenjun, who is leading the match 4.5, 3.5. So that's 1 point, that's 1 game. So Tan Zhongyi needs to win a game, either this one or the last one, to tie up the match. So let's see what happened. Tan Zhongyi with white. And while we've seen Ju Wenjun more or less stick to her guns with white, we've seen Tan Zhongyi sort of all over the place, playing c4, playing e4, playing d4 with the Tory attack. And we did have another Nimso, if I'm not mistaken. So the second Nimso here, bishop to b4, queen c2. And the other one she played knight to f3. Okay, but now queen c2, the Capablanca variation. The idea is obviously to take on c3 with the queen to avoid the double pawns. d5. And now white immediately puts the question on the bishop. And by far the most popular move is to take on c3. Queen takes c3, which was the idea of queen to c2. And now black uses the opportunity to place her knight in the center of the board, hitting the queen, and play c5. So black is trying to use the lead in development. Okay, we're opening things up with d5 and c5. We got our knight on a nice square at the moment, and black is ready to castle. Meanwhile, white needs to open up, get these pieces out, and yeah, more get castled and open up for this bishop. You have to spend some time here. So d takes on c5 was played. I mean, you have to resolve the tension in the center somehow. Now knight c6. So very active play from black here. Knight f3 was played here. If you were to play a move like c takes d5, e takes d5, and then develop. Knight f3 is most popular, and bishop f5. And you have to know what you're doing here. I mean, black is very active. Your queen is lined up here, and actually b4 is the main line here. Okay, knight g3 looks scary, but it's actually quite okay after queen to b2. Okay, you do get this, but queen takes g7. This is really sharp stuff, but it's in white's favor. But none of that in this game. She didn't take on d5. She played knight to f3 immediately, which in a way is more logical. I mean, why give the bishop this nice square and some active opportunities? Nonetheless, queen to a5 check, and now white has to, well, interpose somehow. If you play b4, I can take it with the knight, and your rook is hanging. So interposing is the most popular, and bishop d2 is the most common move. And here, queen takes c5 is the most popular move for black, but knight takes d2 is also been played a lot. And now queen takes d2. Here, Ju Wenjun uses the opportunity to take on c4. She now regains her pawn. And with the bishop having interposed on d2, there's no more bishop pair advantage for white. So this is really close to just being an equal position. White goes for the trade and e3. So white is getting ready in some cases to play knight e5 and simply attack this pawn. So black decides to protect it, b5. Okay, if you let it stand, then we just protected the pawn, and now we have ideas of knight b3 takes c5. So of course, en passant, a takes b, knight d2 now, attacking the pawn, and b5. Okay. If black can, it's a very solid position, black, and You can play king e7, bring the rook around. So white is trying something active here in a4. Trying to undermine these pawns. So if you allow us to take, then we can take on c4. Knight to b7, pinning this pawn. Very nice solution to this problem. And now we're actually threatening knight to c5 and then just take the pawn. So rook a3, defends the rook. And now we're threatening to take on b5. So rook takes a4. We have a trade and now c4 is hanging. Bishop takes c4. So this is okay. White is threatening maybe to attack the pawn. So bishop d7 defends the pawn and prevents white from attacking it. So the pawn structure on the king side is completely symmetrical here. And then we have these two pawns here on a4 and b2. So in general this should be equal, but the play is a lot more easier for black because you can put the rook on the b file. As we'll actually see, knight to e4 was played, king e7. There's no need to castle here because we're in an endgame. So the king is much more useful here, covering some squares. And you know, it's closer to the queen side. It's more active on e7 than it would be on g8. So good endgame technique, king to e7, king to e2, and rook b8. And this is why, okay, this far advanced pawn here is pinning down this one. So maybe a small weakness and something for black to work with. Rook b1. And if Ju Wenjun can work with this, she is the world champion. Because you cannot come back from a 2-game deficit with only 1 game left. But anyway, it's clear that white doesn't have any edge here. And she's actually defending. So it's very crucial for white, for Tan Zhongyi to defend here and keep her hopes of retaining her world championship alive. Knight c5. Yeah, I should briefly mention. Well, it's actually possible to take on g2. Okay, white has options of going here and taking on a4. But nonetheless, I mean, this still looks good for black. I mean, you have some weaknesses now. I mean, this is weak. And this, okay, you know, weakness or strength, it's a toss-up really. But this is definitely an option, but Ju Wenjun decided to play knight c5, which is okay. You're pinning down the rook. It's now stuck to defending this pawn. So black, you know, a nice position. f3. Now we had to protect g2. f5. So now black is expanding on the king side. g5, bishop e2, and h5. So all the pieces are better for black. You know, we have this pin down like we talked about. The rook is more active. It's attacking. While this one is defending. This one is also attacking. So let's make it green. And this one, it's more or less only defending. And this one is more active placed than its counterpart. And our majority, well, not majority, our kingside pawns, you know, have more space. So a better position for black, but is it enough to win? That's always the question. King c2. Trying to free up the rook from defending the b2 pawn. And now the rook at least goes to an open file. Rook to g8. Knight b3 was an interesting move here as well. There are some lines like if white wants to resolve the tension, maybe play rook g1 and f4. And in some cases we can go with the rook to d8 while the g2 pawn is attacked, and this becomes an option. But rook g8 is very logical. I mean, now we're trying to take and actually just penetrate with the rook. So something has to be done. Rook to d4 was played. G takes f3, bishop takes, and pawn takes. So white seems to be pinning her hopes on the counterattack on the a4 pawn. But the rook is coming in, rook g2. What to do? Well, white abandons the attack on the a4 pawn and goes rook d2. He doesn't want to give up this pawn because this pawn is pretty far advanced. Okay, rook g1. Rook back to d4, going back to the counter-attacking idea, but now rook to f1. So now she actually takes the pawn, knight takes a4, but a zwischenzug by Ju Wenjun, she plays e5. The rook goes to h4. And another zwischenzug, rook f2 check, before finally taking on a4. So now the question is which pawn to take, f3 or h2? And the answer is the f3 pawn, which is exactly what Ju Wenjun did. If you take on h2, you're too close to simplification. Let's say we take here, we can play f4. And okay, if you play e4, okay, true, this is nice, but now I just start giving checks, and once you start running, I go back to the 5th, to a5, attack your pawn, and you can't really defend it. I mean, if you don't want the perpetual, you're going to lose the pawn. The other option is to take it, but now rook takes, and we will be able to simplify. King e6 maybe, e4, etc. And our king will just walk close to the corner, and this is a dead draw. So taking the pawn on f3 retains some winning chances. Rook takes f3. King comes to e2, and rook h3. The pawns are equal at the moment, but can't defend this one. Rook a6, rook takes h2, check, king f3. Some checks here, the king goes to g3, rook e2, king f3, and now we take on b2. So actually the 2 pawns up, but now rook h6. And this is well calculated by Tan Zhongyi. After rook h2, I mean, we have to keep this pawn. Now, a very important move for white, which holds the draw. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Stop the video and try to find the drawing move for white here. It's actually a very nice idea. Assuming you paused and came back, the drawing idea, and thumbs up if you found it, is e4. But why? What's the idea here? Because f4 looks really tempting. Because now we have some checks coming here, and maybe rook here winning the pawn. Double connected pass pawns, and we're already up a pawn. So what's the idea here? What's really passive? So this is losing in all cases except one, which is the idea which you had to see when you played e4. And that is to play rook to e6. Now if you take it, I cannot move anything because it's stalemate, it's game over. And as you will quickly see, whichever way the king goes, the rook simply follows. And you cannot penetrate past the 6th rank with the black king. So this is a draw by stalemate or repetition, whichever one you prefer. So Ju Wenjun had to try something else. You tried rook h4, but now he takes f5. And okay, you win the pawn, you're up 2 pawns, but nice move, king e4. And the rook is too passive. Passivity in rook endgames is usually not good. And this rook is defending both of the pawns. And this king can't really, again, can't penetrate the 6th rank. And that's absolute key here. So to activate this rook here on g5, you have to give up one of the pawns. And yeah, let's just see what happened. Rook a6, king f7, some checks. A rook here. And finally, okay, you have to activate the rook, and now I take on e5. And this is a theoretical draw. Tan Zhongyi brought her king closer and then attacked the 8th pawn. And it turns out that the king is close enough here. Now we just keep the rook on the g file. We can let the pawn advance, which it did. But in the end, black doesn't have anything. So the king here is stopping the king from entering, or from escaping, and sheltering the pawn down the board. So there's nothing to be done really. Some checks, yeah, some meaningless move basically. And finally a draw was agreed here on move 80. So the king has to be further away. I mean, black's only idea when you have the king here and the pawn here is to bring the rook somehow to g3, you know, make a bridge so the king can come out. But to do that, the white king would have to be much further away than it was in the game. So this ends in a draw. And one more chance for Tan Zhongyi. She has the black pieces in game 10 and she has to win. A must-win game, so it will be interesting to see what they come up with tomorrow. No, it's not tomorrow. Let me just check. The final game, game 10, is actually on Friday. So we'll look forward to that and hopefully I'll see you then. Bye bye.